Hey everybody, welcome back to our COVID Connect series on Ignatian discernment. Yesterday we outlined some basic strategies for how to discern God's will and make decisions by searching for God's consolation, by looking for the choices that make you feel at peace in your spiritual life and feel confident about your relationship with God. Today, we're going to look at some more strategies that St. Ignatius gives us for times when decisions are especially difficult, when you've tried searching for God's will and for His consolation, but still find yourself confused or torn or unclear. As we mentioned yesterday, it's always important to look at yourself and make sure that you're approaching the decision with an open mind. Sometimes we can fail to recognize or accept a good choice when we have our hearts irrationally set on some other option. We should also be aware of our own motives and always try to make sure that we're prioritizing doing God's will above everything else. And of course, we should always be praying for God's help. Once you've done those things, then there are some other strategies St. Ignatius has outlined. For example, he would often recommend that people literally write out a list of pros and cons. Try to put both of your options down and list every possible advantage and disadvantage of each option. Then you can have a series of lists that you can spend time praying over. Sometimes if we're especially confused or our thoughts are especially muddled, it can be really helpful to lay them out and visualize them in a much more rational, ordered manner. St. Ignatius also recommends that people use their imagination. For example, he would often recommend that we can imagine what advice we would give to somebody else, somebody we didn't know who was in the same dilemma we are in. Because sometimes it can help to take ourselves out of a problem and look at it from an outside perspective. Or you can try imagining the best version of yourself, the version of yourself who embodies all the ideals you strive for, and try to figure out what that person would do. Another option, and one that might be a little grim but is helpful, is to picture yourself looking back on this decision from your deathbed. And sometimes taking that far distant perspective can help you put everything into proportion. Eventually, one or more of these strategies will help us move in a certain direction. Once we've made a decision, then St. Ignatius would encourage us to ask God for a confirmation, that is, a sign either external or internal that we've made the right choice. And it might not be something really earth-shattering or really obvious, but St. Ignatius was confident that God would help us make sure that our choice was the right one. God would send us confirmation if we're on the right path. Finally, once you've prayed and tried to seek God's will, then you can act. You might not be totally confident, you might still have a few lingering doubts, but even if that's the case, know that God loves you and God will not abandon you. We should do our best to act wisely and to consult God, but eventually it's okay to let go and trust that God will steer you home.